Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in War Thunder looking at a user-created model, and this model is the Avro Vulcan B.1A. The model itself was made by Snozzeltoff, and I have left a link in the description of this video so you can go and test it out for yourself. I would definitely want to thank Snozzeltoff for creating this, and as I said in the previous videos looking at some of C. Peregrine's work, I am very thankful to all of these guys who make these models, because it's really nice to see what can be created. As a person who knows for a fact I could never do something as this good, it is great to kind of just sit there and admire the work that these guys do. But anyway, if you want to have a go with it, as I said, the link is in the description, and also some more information can be found there at the War Thunder Live post. So what we're going to do in this video is look at the history of the Avro Vulcan, and also talk about, its place in the game, if there is one. The Vulcan is seen as Britain's premier V-Force nuclear bomber, and there's a good reason for this, because it basically won the contract to say it was. So the Avro 698 Vulcan is a jet-powered delta-wing strategic bomber. It first flew on the 30th of August 1952 at Woodford in England, and the design itself was considered the most technically advanced of the submissions in response to the specification B3546, although it was thought by some as the riskiest option. Now generally, if you have the most technically advanced, it is also seen as the riskiest. It's kind of, in part and parcel, but let's talk about this specification B3546. So if you don't know how it works in Britain, basically the British Air Ministry, or AM as it's known, they'll throw out an operational requirement, and what this is, it's a general, it's a general idea of what they want. So an example of this is they would want a heavy bomber, or let's say a medium bomber, and then after it is decided that this is what they want to go ahead with, then they start to specify what they want. So that comes in the form of a specification. So for the Avro Vulcan, the specifications that were required, first of all, you have the OR229, which is the operational requirement for a 4-engine swept-wing jet medium bomber. And then the B3546 specification also specified that it needs to have a cruising speed of 500 knots and a ceiling of at least 55,000 feet. So you can see how those two intertwine with each other. Now, there were actually a number of projects which were competing against each other for this requirement and specification. There was the Armstrong Whitworth AW56, of course the Avro Vulcan, the eventual winner, the Bristol Type 172, de Havilland's DH111, the Handley Page Victor, Short PD1, and there was also designs submitted by Vickers and English Electric. So you can see that this was very much a highly contested operational requirement and specification that people were really going for. And of course, since the Avro Vulcan won it, it was obviously seen as one of the best designs to go forward with. Remember, this is all to just discuss which design should go forward. This is all, the whole process is to work out who to give the funding to, so they could go on and create prototypes and so forth. So obviously Vulcan won the specification contest, and then they made some aircraft. So a number of scale aircraft were made, such as the Avro 707 and 710. They were produced and designed to test and refine the delta wing design principles and handling characteristics, although the latter, the 710 aircraft, failed to come to fruition due to numerous delays. Now, the Avro test pilot Wing Commander Roland Rowley John Falk, or Falk, F-A-L-K, he was actually dressed in a distinct pinstripe suit. He finally took the gloss white Type 698 prototype, the VX770, into the air on the 30th of August 1952, and it was a single crew member, so just him, for safety reasons. Remember, the Vulcan actually has a crew of 5, I believe. It doesn't just have a crew of 1 person. It has a pilot, a co-pilot, and an AEO, a navigator radar and also a navigator plotter. So it isn't just, just one man, such as Wing Commander Roland John Falk was in this. So he took it up on the 30th of August 1952, so that is seen as the first day when the Vulcan actually flew, even though it was the prototype VX-770. This was powered by 4 Rolls-Royce RA3 Avon engines. It had a temporary fuel tank fitted into the bomb bay and only fitted with the first pilot's ejection seat. Falk took the aircraft through a number of unconventional maneuvers before opening the throttle to such a point that it shattered a number of factory windows. So he really put the pedal to the metal and just annihilated a lot of stuff on the ground. A matter of weeks after this test, the unnamed aircraft appeared at the SBAC Farnborough Air Show, although a number of options were also being considered. These included the Ottawa, in honour of the contribution made by Avro Canada at the time. So they were still working out what name it was going to have. They worked out that this machine was great and that they wanted to go forward with this Delta Wing idea, but they didn't know what to name it. So the UK press were full of their own suggestions as well. They decided that they would either want the Albion, the Avenger, the Apollo, or the Assajet. And eventually, pressure from the Chief of the Air Staff to reflect the V-bomber classification, the Air Council announced the aircraft would be the Avro Vulcan. So the reason why it's called the Vulcan is after the V-bomber classification. Obviously, a lot of people wanted A for Avro, but that's generally not how it works. If you look at a lot of if you look at a lot of designs from Avro, they don't normally follow that idea. Anyway, a second prototype was produced, the VX-777. It flew in September of 1953, and it was more of a representative of the production aircraft, having been lengthened to accommodate a longer nose undercarriage leg, a visual bomb-aiming blister under the cabin, and fitted with Bristol Olympus 100 engines. At Falk's suggestion, a fighter-style control stick replaced the control wheel, probably just to make it easier to use. During the trials in July of 1954, the VX-777 was substantially damaged in a heavy landing at Farnborough, although it was repaired and then fitted with Olympus 101 engines before resuming trials in October 1955. So the main differences between the first prototype was an elongated nose and also just upgrading the engines gradually. There was a few issues with this prototype though. Obviously, being a new design, you're going to run into a few teething problems, and one of them was the handling problems. As the aircraft approached the speed of sound at high altitude, this resulted in a tendency to enter an uncontrollable dive, which proved unacceptable to the Aeroplane and Armament Experimental Establishment, the A&AEE, at Boscombe Down. I wonder why. Generally, if you go into an uncontrollable dive, it's not normally seen as a good thing. So the solution included the Phase 2 wing, which was featuring a kinked and drooped leading edge and vortex generators on the upper surface, which was first tested on the Avro 707A. Then, after this was decided and they tried to fix, the issues, the Vulcan B.1 was first delivered to the RAF in 1956, whilst deliveries of the improved Vulcan B.2 started in 1960. So a number of foreign governments expressed an interest in the aircraft, although none ever came to fruition. The later B-2 featured more powerful engines, a larger wing, an improved electrical system, and electronic countermeasures, or ECMs, many of which were modified to accept the Blue Steel missile. And as part of the RAF's V-Force, the aircraft was a key part of the UK's airborne nuclear deterrent during much of the Cold War. Although typically armed with nuclear weapons, the Vulcan's ability to also carry conventional weapons was used to full effect on Operation Black Book during the Falklands War between the United Kingdom and Argentina in 1982. This was the only mission flown in anger by an Avro Vulcan. One of the key things about the Avro Vulcan is that it actually carried no defensive weaponry. So no turrets, no automated stuff, no even offensive armaments. The Vulcan relied completely upon its high-speed, high-altitude flight to evade interception, and whilst electronic countermeasures were employed by the B-1, which was designated a B-1A, and the B-2 from 1960 onwards, the Vulcan was always vulnerable to air attack, and all 134 production aircraft, so those 45 B-1 designs, 89 B-2 designs, they were built at Avro's Woodward factory in Cheshire between 1948 and 1965, although one aircraft remained on the ground as a static test frame. The change to low-level tactics was made in the mid-1960s, and by the mid-1970s only 9 Vulcans were adapted for maritime radar reconnaissance operations. They were redesignated as B-2 MRRs, and in the final years of service 6 Vulcans were designated K-2 and converted to tanker configuration for aerial refueling before reaching final retirement in 1984. At one point, a Vulcan B-3 was proposed as a long-endurance missile carrier with up to 12 hours duration, but it was never built. So the Vulcan was able to serve its job. The specifications that it was required for, it was able to do. It was used to great effect by the British, as said, as a nuclear deterrent, and also in the campaigns that it needed to be, such as the Falklands War. But because of a change in tactic, because of a different way of looking at the world, and a different way of managing the air, the air over Britain and even over its allies or even some of its enemies, the Vulcan kind of became surplus to requirement, which a lot of vehicles do, over time. Does this mean that it was a useless vehicle? Of course not. It was a very useful vehicle, even if you just want to see it as a great way of testing and implementing a delta wing design. But the one that we have in game is the Avro Vulcan B.1A. So it's basically the initial production aircraft with the addition of electronic countermeasures, or ECMs. So the flight performance that you see in game, even though it's not fully realistic, it should measure very similarly to the Avro Vulcan B1. The B2 is just a much more upgraded version with its insane engines. Overall, what do I see with this vehicle in game? Well, unfortunately, with vehicles like the Vautour, when they were added, a lot of people were up in arms about these high-tier bombers, which were incredibly fast and basically just designed for bombing. You've got to remember, the Vulcan has no offensive or defensive armaments when it comes to machine guns or cannons or anything like that, so it's pretty much similar to one of the Vautours, so it can only bomb and then run away. One of the major reasons why the Vulcan existed was, obviously, as the nuclear deterrent. We don't have any nuclear stuff in the game, but since it can carry conventional stuff, there is a place in the game for that. And what can it carry? Well, it can carry 21,000-pound bombs. So even if, it doesn't get its nuclear armament, that's still a hell of a payload. And unfortunately, with the current state of War Thunder, if we're looking at it at the present day, this thing would take over games. It would be able to bomb out bases, it would be able to bomb out the airfield in a swift take. Remember back in the day when BVs were doing this, when B-29s were doing this, people did not have fun. They did not think it was fun to play against. The majority of people don't really like bombers, and because of this, I can't see the Avro Vulcan at this time being added. Now, with the ideas that have been floating around recently, with the fact of next year looking at rank 6, rank 6 jets, and, them coming to the game, we're talking about, 70s and 80s aircraft, which can go incredibly fast. They have some, automated missile technologies. They have all of these interesting things. Could the Vulcan come then? Yes, I think it could. Will it get absolutely annihilated? Yes, it can. Because one of the things that's key about the Vulcan for its defensive capabilities is being fast. What's faster? all of those other planes, which will get added to the game for each nation. So unfortunately, the Vulcan is in either it's going to be too overpowered state if you put it in the game nowadays, but if you put equal aircraft, equal fighters of the time against it from the major countries, in War Thunder, it will unfortunately just be absolutely annihilated by them. There is no winning for the Vulcan, unfortunately. Does that mean it shouldn't be added? No, I believe it should be added, just like a lot of other machines. I still believe in War Thunder about the combined forces element and how it all works. I do not want the game just to be a fighter-on-fighter fight. And therefore, for me, yes, I want to see it in game, but I just want to reiterate, the shortcomings of this machine are quite large, and a lot of machines over the years have been criticized for not having any defensive or offensive armaments apart from bomb loads. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.